Have you ever watched a movie and after it was over thought to yourself that it was good, but could have been better if one particular subplot had been changed or even removed entirely? Because I know that's happened to me on many occasions and for many other people as well. And today I'd like to go over one of the most famous cases of an otherwise good movie having an almost universally regarded pretty pointless subplot, and that being the 1983 movie National Lampoon's Vacation. Now, obviously, there will be extreme spoilers ahead for this movie, so if you haven't seen it yet or plan on watching it and you don't want anything ruined, you should probably turn off the video now and come back another day. This will be your only warning. Okay, so for those of you who aren't familiar, National Lampoon's Vacation is about the Griswold family going on a road trip to Wally World and all of the misadventures they get into on the way there. Now, one of the many things getting in their way is a young woman that catches Clark Griswold's attention a couple of times and gradually becomes a source of infatuation for him. Then, towards the end, when the family's basically hit rock bottom, Clark tries flirting with her and is even tempted into an affair, but after being caught in the hotel pool, decides to patch things up with his family instead, and the young woman is never seen again. Now, many have argued that this little subplot wasn't needed in the first place, and I would be one to agree with that. However, it's not because, as one person put it, Beverly D'Angelo is so beautiful that it isn't believable that any man would be tempted to cheat on her. Now, I don't like to be rude, but that's not how the world has ever worked. If we're going by that logic, then why did Brad Pitt have an affair with Angelina Jolie while married to Jennifer Aniston? Why did Tim Burton cheat on Helen Bonham Carter? And why did Jesse James cheat on Sandra Bullock? They were all pretty. To put it simply, you can be the prettiest girl or the most handsome guy on earth, but that still doesn't guarantee anything. In fact, going by looks alone might even help justify its place in the movie, because he's at his lowest point, and the younger and just as beautiful girl he's been dreaming about is actually giving him attention. So what subsequently happens at the pool would at least be understandable if you're looking from that extremely flawed point of view. No. The reason the subplot doesn't work is not because he already has a beautiful wife, but because it completely conflicts with Clark's character throughout the rest of the movie. From the very start, he's portrayed as a very dedicated and loving family man whose biggest flaw is perhaps that he's too determined to give his family the perfect vacation. He even insists on taking the road trip rather than a plane so that they can spend quality time together in an old-fashioned road trip sort of way. So for him to be suddenly having eyes for a young girl he just happens to see while driving is completely at odds with that. Now, don't get me wrong. Unfortunately, we all have our moments. But the fact that it keeps persisting and something almost comes of it is the part that isn't believable. Because the rest of the time, he's just a man who wants to make his family happy. And then for those brief moments, he's suddenly lusting after a girl much younger than he is to the point that he almost chooses to act on it. And again, that just doesn't seem like something he would do, especially when you get a couple of scenes in that very same movie showing how happy the two are together. Some might even say that it's so out of place that those parts almost feel like they belong in a different movie entirely, which reveals another problem with that subplot. Because here's another thing to consider. The main source of comedy throughout the movie is that most of the bad things happening to them are out of their control. Like the world just seems out to make them suffer as much as possible. And yeah, there are times where their suffering is more self-inflicted, like when he fails to notice the closed road sign, accidentally leaves the dog tied to the car, or even insisting on taking the road trip in the first place. But that's all relatively minor and things that anybody could understandably do in a similar situation. But to suddenly have him caught almost having an affair while in a hotel pool, completely of his own doing, is also at odds with the movie's tone, because it's something he brings entirely on himself rather than have it be mostly down to their rotten luck like the rest of the movie is. And then after that scene's over, the movie goes right back to having the comedy come from them being victims of circumstance, which only makes those scenes stick out even more. Because the thing is, the writers ended up selling Clark on being a dedicated family man plagued by bad luck so well that the ending actually had to be changed because test audiences felt so sorry for him and the rest of his family that they wanted to see them get a happier ending than the one originally filmed. And I can completely understand that because after seeing what they go through, you genuinely do want to see them get some kind of happy ending and feel that everything they suffered through at least meant something. And if you ask me, they should have stuck to portraying Clark strictly that way, because having him lusting after the young woman like that and almost having an affair with her could have easily ended up making him unsympathetic to the audience. Now, luckily that didn't happen, but that's still just another reason why that shouldn't have been there in the first place. If anything, they should have gone with their original idea of having the son, Russ, who becomes infatuated with her and have it be him who gets caught in the pool with her. Because I think that would have been much more in character, seeing a rather bored teenager become enamored with an older woman who actually starts giving him attention and would have fit in with the movie's overall tone better. But to give credit where it's due, I think the whole idea was handled a lot better in National Lampoon's Christmas Vacation, where Clark is shown to be a bit enamored with a store clerk and later on, while dreaming about his new pool, starts fantasizing about her. Then he snapped back to reality and she never once crosses his mind again. And thus, unlike in the first movie, nothing ever becomes of it. And I think that was better because it not only doesn't interfere with the story like in the other movie, but also has Clark acting much more in character. Because, like I said before, even the best of us will have moments like that. It's simply human nature. We can't get around it. But the moment his little niece starts talking to him, he immediately forgets about his fantasies and listens to what she has to say. And from there, he at least tries to give his family, quote, the best Christmas ever, never once letting his infatuation cloud his mind again. And that's much more in line with what you'd expect a man like Clark to do. Maybe let his superficial infatuations take over his mind for a few minutes, but never let it get in the way of his family. Now, you can argue that even with all of that, the writers still maybe shouldn't have put that in there either to begin with. But I will say that if they were going to, that was the best way to do it. If only to reinforce the fact that Clark would never put his fantasies before his family. Now, if you enjoyed that little subplot in the first movie and thought it provided its share of funny moments, that's fine. Because it's not like it stops the movie from being enjoyable or anything like that. And I've seen plenty of other movies where even minor subplots were so bad it ruined the whole rest of the movie because of it. Like I even said, it was honestly such a non-issue that it didn't even make the audience stop sympathizing with Clark to the point that the ending had to be changed because of it. All I am saying is that I do agree with the people who say it was unnecessary, particularly because I feel it conflicts with Clark's behavior throughout the rest of the movie and doesn't fit in tonally with the movie's brand of comedy. To put it simply, as a writer myself, I wouldn't have done it that way. Now, in this case, it didn't really affect the overall movie too much, but it's still important to remember that one of the most important elements to storytelling is consistency, and the writers may have just gotten quite lucky that the inconsistencies in character and tone that the subplot created didn't have any major effects on the movie as a whole. Okay, that wraps this video up. So now it's your turn to tell me. Do you think that subplot involving the girl was unnecessary and almost drags down an otherwise funny movie? Or do you think it's perfectly fine and provides plenty of funny moments on its own? Please feel free to discuss your thoughts in the comments below. And remember, you don't have to agree with anything I just said. If you liked that subplot and even thought it was hilarious, I have no problem with that. We're only here to have a pleasant discussion, nothing else. And lastly, thank you all for watching. I always greatly appreciate it, and I hope to see you all next time.